So this is the April edition. I guess, when did I start this? August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. This is the eighth one. I'm bad at math. I have to use my fingers to count. So the eighth Movement Nerd Hangout, and today our topic of discussion is what is good posture? As always for these, we have a couple of intentions. First one is we want to define what is posture, and more importantly, what does it mean for you? Because that word means something a little bit different for everybody. And what is good versus bad posture? Are those even labels that are useful? And I think the answer is yes and no. And I'll cover a little bit why I think those things as we go through the session. We're going to explore the idea of improving posture through the lens of anatomy in motion, which is what all of these movement hangouts are based on, the gait mechanics that Gary Ward teaches through his model of gait in his courses, Anatomy in Motion. And if you want more info about that, if this is a new thing for you, Gary Ward's Anatomy in Motion, just let me know. I'm happy to link you to some helpful things so you can learn a bit more about what his work is about. For me, his work was very life-changing when I started to learn it and put it into my body. So I'm hoping that for you, this work will also be similarly useful, if not life-changing. Not that today is going to change your life, but his body of work has been very transformative for me. So I'm very excited to be able to share it with you guys. And lastly, we're going to be doing a bit of a movement exploration to explore some strategies, not for correcting our posture, but for helping your body define for itself how is its best way to hold itself, based on giving you more options for movement, not forcibly trying to hold an ideal. So the backstory, my backstory, or my intro story I'd like to share is that as a dancer for many, many years, I got this idea in my head that going like this was really good posture. And then I did a lot of back bending, so a lot of extension of my spine. So over time, I developed a posture that was very upright and very lordotic. So lordosis refers to that deep curve, deep extension of the lower back. So that's the position I was stuck in. And I got a lot of compliments on it. People were always saying, oh my God, Monica, you're sitting up so straight. Everyone should be like you. And I was like, oh my God, if only you knew. This is what's keeping me in pain. I actually can't get out of this position no matter how hard I try. And that's where the idea of people think I have good posture, but is it really good posture? That's where that kind of came from. And so I want you to appreciate that just because you see someone who's standing straight, you might covet that kind of posture, but you don't know what they're going through. They might actually not, that posture might not be serving them. That might be their only option, and it might not be very useful. So we can't just take things at face value sometimes. My good posture was not helping me, and I feel a lot better now that I know how to slouch. So I slouch very happily these days. So what I'd love to know, you can type an answer into the chat box if you like. I'd like to know, what is your definition of posture? Just have a moment to sit with that. What does posture mean for you? And if you're happy to share it, I would love to know what you think. What is posture? It's a word that we say a lot, but do we actually have a definition of it for ourselves? Anyone is sitting on sit bones, balance, alignment of the body, where my body is right now, how one holds themselves when upright, head balanced comfortably on neck. These are great. So everyone's definition is a little bit different, eh? So does posture need to mean balance in the body? Does posture need to mean when your head is sitting up on your body straight? Those are kind of our ideals of what posture should be for us. But it might not actually define what posture is as a universal principle. So as always, I get a little bit stuck into words, and then I go on deep dives into semantics, and then I get lost. So I had to look up what posture actually meant in the dictionary. And there's 3 definitions. And the first one, posture is the position in which someone holds their body when standing or sitting. But like, what about lying down? Isn't lying down a posture too? Anyway, I'll get into that a little bit more, but there were two other definitions that I thought were interesting. A particular way of dealing with something or an attitude towards something, or to behave in a way intending to impress or mislead. And I was like, those are interesting ideas, because sometimes those intentions show up in our posture and shape our posture, even though they're not actually our posture themselves. So I think definition one is pretty close to accurate, the position in which someone holds their body when sitting or standing, but I don't think it's the whole definition. It's not the complete story, because there's the posture that you hold, like the posture that me, Monica, holds right now. What am I doing with my body? But then there's also the only way that my body knows how to hold itself, which is based on everything I've done with my life up until now. So there's the thing that I impose on my body, and then there's the thing my body can only do. And sometimes those two things clash with each other, and they clash with my ideal of what I should be able to do. So what if my only option for how to hold my body is to be like this, which is actually pretty accurate. So this is my body's default. And then there's my idea of how I hold myself, which should be maybe like this, a bit more straight. And then there's this strain with which I hold myself like this, even though my body doesn't actually have the option to do that. So that's the main point I'd like to get across. The way that your body is holding itself now is really its only option right now. And a lot of us are trying to force ourselves out of there, but without actually giving our bodies back the option to get out of there. So let's get into that a little bit more, but what that means. So this leads me into a question that people ask me quite a bit, which is, why is my body like this? Why am I holding this posture? Whenever I do an assessment with somebody, we're always looking first at their static alignment. What's the position of your spine? Are you kind of like me? Is your pelvis twisted to one side? Is your head off to one side? And people are like, oh, that's weird. I'm really off center. Why did my body get like this? And my answer is kind of snarky, unintentionally. It's usually, I don't know, you tell me. I haven't been following you around your whole life. And usually people are looking to blame something like a muscle, like, oh, it's my psoas. I'm like, well, your psoas is like that for a reason. What's the actual reason behind that? Because what if your current posture is simply the best possible way that your skeleton currently knows how to organize itself based on everything your body has been through, all the accidents, all the injuries, all the repetitive habits, all the sports, the many times your horse has stepped on your toes if you're Am. Like, what if your posture is the sum total of all of your life's events? In which case, I can't possibly tell you why you're like that. You know way better than me. And that's kind of the mystery to unravel, because we can't possibly remember everything, but everything shows up in our current posture. We don't have any other option. We can't hide it no matter how hard we try. But most of us are trying pretty hard to hide it. So I'd like to know, when was the last time you just let yourself stand without posturing, without trying to put yourself in a good posture? Even unconsciously, a lot of us are standing around doing things to alter our posture, which might be very useful to do, or it might actually be keeping us from experiencing what our truth of where our bodies are. So what I'd like us to do right now, to break up my talking a little bit, because I don't know, I think what I'm saying is interesting, but I also feel like it can get pretty boring just listening to me talk. So let's stand up and do a little exercise. Come on up to your feet. And we're just gonna take stock of how you honestly stand right now for a minute. So just let your body rest into the bones of your feet and pretend like no one's watching. Like you just got up in the morning and you went to the toilet, and then you got up and you're half asleep and you're in the kitchen and you're making your coffee and no one's watching you and you really don't care. How would you be standing? Just let yourself go. I want you to notice if you have any sort of inclination to hold yourself in a particular way. You can close your eyes if you like. If you let yourself go, where do you end up? Where does your body go without you interfering. And I can feel myself gradually just like leaning to the side. Yep, this is where I usually go. Where's the position of your head? If you just let yourself go and forget what you should stand like, where does your head go? Does it slide forwards a bit? Where does your pelvis go in space? Do you feel like you slip forwards and you're into the toes? Do you feel like you just let your back round and your shoulders slide forwards? Or do you feel like you're like me and you're standing really arched with your back and really military-like? Take note of what you have to let go of to get to who you are naturally. What are the parts of your body that need to be allowed to rest? And this is very good information. For me, I have to let go of my habit of correcting myself to stand with my shoulders level. I'm sliding to the side. I also have to let go of my right leg, which wants to hold itself turned out, and just let it turn in and bend. And if I'm just being me, this is how I will stand. And if I'm being honest, I'll probably stand a little bit like this too. Sunk into my spine like this. Pretty. So when you've got your information about that, and this can be hard to do sometimes. It can be very challenging just to let yourself be what's the word I'm looking for? Stand without any sort of impression on you of how you ought to be. Whatever your sport was that you did, you might have been told that this is the way you have to stand, especially if you've been in the dance world like me. Lots of ideas about how dancers should stand. And whenever you feel like you've gotten your information, you can keep standing or you can sit back down, whatever you're comfortable with. And this is a practice that can take many years to actually get clear about. It took me a long time to know what was clinging on. It's often a very unconscious thing that we do. So if that was your just natural posture, your like ugly posture that you try to hide perhaps, or maybe you don't, maybe you're like, whatever. So what does good posture mean for you? If anybody would like to share their definition of good posture, I am dying to hear it. If you want to type something in, you can do that. Or what did you find yourself doing in that exercise where we just stood naturally? What did you let go of to get to your natural posture? And by that, what would you have been doing to have good posture? For me, I shared it was slipping to the side. And whenever I'm with people, I think this looks weird, so I try to correct it and find balance. I don't know if that's useful for me because I have a lot of stiffness in my spine. Nobody wants to share, that's okay. Here we go. Someone's saying something. Good posture, pain-free. Pain-free might be a result of good posture, but is pain-free good posture? Good posture is balancing weight equally, so there isn't a strain on anything. I like that, yeah. But I also don't really like the word good. I don't like the word good or bad to describe posture because I don't like to put a judgment on it. It just kind of is what it is, and your body will find its best center. So rather than good or bad, I think that a nicer way to think about it is the way that Gary Ward puts it in his Anatomy and Motion coursework is finding center. So another thing to consider is, we already touched on this a little bit, but is your current posture a cause or an effect? What do you think? Cause or effect? Is your posture an effect of your problems or a cause of your problems? It can be a bit of both, I think. You can have an accident which will affect your posture, and then your posture can start to become a cause in itself of more distortions through your body, more discomfort, more strain through your body. So it's a little bit of both. But at the root of it, there might have been the effect that set everything off, like that ankle sprain when you were 6. Who knows? That might have been the thing that really kind of threw this monkey wrench through your system. And I want to tell a story about, I have a lot of stories in this session. I hope it doesn't take too long to tell them all, but I have a client who, when he was, I think 2 years old or 3 years old, he was very young, below 5 for sure. He fell and he banged the left side of his head into a radiator and got a really bad concussion. And to this day, he holds this posture as if his side of his head got smashed into a radiator. Like he just stands with his head like this. And it takes, oh man, it's been taking a long time, but gradually he's coming back upright with his neck. And as his head comes back upright, the rest of his body is starting to settle underneath that. But if we didn't know that when he was that young, he smashed his head on the radiator, we might just be doing, I don't know, some neck stretches, but not actually addressing that there was this significant impact. And for him, actually, a lot of craniosacral work was impactful for getting everything balanced in his body. So it's useful to know what your body has gone through so you know exactly where to pinpoint your attention, and then the journey becomes a bit more clear. You at least have an entry point that is logical. So for him, his entry point was, why does my body hurt? Why is my head to the side? Oh yeah, when I was 4 or 3 or 2 or whatever, it's massive head trauma. Let's go back and work with that and see how the rest of the body aligns itself. So it's not about pinning his shoulders back and holding his head straight. It was about getting some really focused work on his skull. So if you think about it this way, is your current posture your choice, or is it the only option you have? It might just be the only option that you currently have. And so in the movement part of this session, we're going to be giving you a couple of new options or ways of exploring how to regain some new options for movement. If your body has new information, new options, it can do something different than it's currently doing without forcing a new static position upon your body, without actually having the options available to do that new position. Now, in sessions with people, I use posture, like a static posture assessment, to get a lot of information. So what information does our static posture give us? So if used as an assessment, it's a subjective assessment. So there's always a little bit of room for speculation about whether what we're seeing is true, of course. But if we use it over time and get very objective as we can about what subjective information we're seeing about ourselves, we can use it to consistently track changes over time. And we can use it to understand why things feel the way they feel. And for me, this sounds logical, but then I was working with a client a few weeks ago, and I just want to show you how he was standing. He was standing with his pelvis like this, and his rib cage like this, and then his spine like this, and his weight like this in his right foot. And I was telling him, this is how your body is standing. And where do you think his discomfort was? You can all stand up and try this position if you like and see where you feel the discomfort. I recommend it. It's a useful exercise. Twist your pelvis to the left, twist your rib cage to the right. Put your weight all the way in your right foot, and then lean your spine to the right and see where you feel the discomfort. For him, he was feeling it all in the right side of his lower back here, which would be getting very squashed and compressed. And I was attempting to explain it to him. So this is your position. This is where you feel the pain. This is where the area is all stuck down together, where you're feeling the discomfort. It's compressed. We want to unwind that and open that space up for you. And in my head, it sounded perfectly logical, but he's like, I don't understand. And he just was not understanding. So I asked him this: would you agree or disagree that the way that you stand and the posture that you hold has an impact on the pain you're feeling? Are those two things correlated? And he was like, I don't know how to answer that question. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to make this any simpler for you. So that was a bit of my failing, but also it made me realize that there's a bit of a disconnect sometimes for people in these things. So what I'd like to do now is another little exercise just to help you experience and to understand why we're looking at posture. What is a useful way of looking at posture? So if you haven't already, come up to your feet and let's do this little exercise here. So let's all do the same thing. We'll make it very simple. I'd like you to side bend your spine to the right, like this. And then I'd like you to take your chest and just go down and slouch. So you're going to flex your spine and side bend to the right. And the first thing that we can get from this as information is what parts of your body, let's just keep it to the spine here and the torso generally. What parts of your body are getting short and compressed? So if you're leaning to the right, hopefully you can feel like you're a little bit squashed to this right side, right in here. So with the rib cage and the pelvis coming closer together, closing that space, we could say that all the muscles in this area are in a more short state. So we have some abdominal muscles, your QL, stuff around this side here generally, when you're ascending colon, a little bit squashed. And on the other side, everything's getting opened long. So all the muscles on that side of the rib cage, even your lats, your obliques, all the abdominals, really, the QL, everything's getting long on this side. So you might feel there's some discomfort in the long side because it's getting pulled long, or you might feel there's some discomfort in the short side because it's getting squashed short, or you might feel both sides are kind of uncomfortable. Okay, I need to come out because that's really uncomfortable. And then if we think about that other plane of motion where you're rounding your spine forwards, what's getting long and what's getting short? So if you're just rounded forwards like this, can you feel how, again, all your abdominal muscles here are getting shortened and squashed, and your diaphragm's getting squashed? Stomach, all the organs here are getting squashed, and your lungs, your pecs, everything's getting short. And on the back side of your body, all the upper back muscles, your rhomboids, your lats, your spine extension muscles, everything's getting pulled long. So you might have discomfort in the front of your body because everything's getting squashed and compressed and shortened. Or you might have discomfort on the back of your body because everything's getting pulled long, like an elastic band that's just stretched to its wit's end. So this is the information we can get from your static posture. Not to say it's bad or good, but this is the facts. This is what's actually happening at the level of the muscles and the joints. Now, last thing we can just get from information here, which is very important, is if you just stand with your body straight and feel where the weight is in your feet, hopefully it's, for the most part, kind of balanced right and left. What happens if you side bend all the way to the right? Where did the weight go in your feet? For some of you, it might have gone deeper into the right foot, like now there's more pressure in your right foot. And for some of you, side bending to the right might have just pushed all your weight into your left foot. Either are options. Or for some of you, it might have just stayed the same. But usually there's a little bit of a weight shift that happens by bending your spine to the side. So what's the implications of that? What if this was your only option and you bent to the right and you just live here and more weight's now in your right foot? And now every step you take, you are staying more in your right foot. How many steps do you take in a day? I don't know. I read the number today in a book and I instantly forgot what it was, but it was big. So imagine if you took, like, I don't know, 300,000. No, that's probably more than a day. I don't know how many steps you take in a day. It's a lot. And how many of those are more on your right foot? And so you can see how over the course of those steps that you take every day with more weight in the right foot, that would just further reinforce this compression on this side. This leg would start to wear out and get tired a little bit more. If there's any weird postures, because posture is more about your spine, if there's weird postures that are off center at your knee or your foot or in your hips, then you're putting more weight through those weirdly distorted joints. And that can cause a little bit of discomfort or strain or whatever through that side, more than this side, which is doing much less compared to this side in terms of supporting your body weight. So it's not just about aesthetics and looking nice, but actually the posture that you hold can push your center of mass, your body weight, into more one foot than the other, and that can disrupt your whole walking cycle. And with every step you take, you reinforce something useful and balanced, or you reinforce something awkward and unbalanced that might cause excess strain through your body. So it's good to know how you stand from a function perspective. So for me, what we're after today is finding center, which is this lifelong mission we can embark on of trying to unravel the mysteries of why we're standing the way we're standing and how did we get there. And what we are ultimately after, regardless of whether we understand the whole story, is for every joint in our body to experience motion from one end of its spectrum to the other. So can you fully flex your spine and fully extend your spine and move freely in and out? Can you side bend to the right, side bend to the left, and move freely in from one end of the spectrum to the other to promote balance? So that's what our movement exploration is going to be about today, finding a center, not correcting ourselves. The problem with correcting bad posture is first that you've labeled it bad, and then there's this feeling of guilt associated with anything bad that we do. So relieve yourselves of guilt. You don't need to worry about that. You are the way you are, not because it's your fault, just how life unfolded for you that you're kind of stuck, if you're me, like this. So trying to correct posture without having access to that full spectrum, one side to the other, is what causes a lot of strain on our bodies. I think I always tell this story about this one client I had who was raised by nuns when she was young, and they always got her to stand like this with her shoulders back, and she actually cannot let her shoulders go forward because that is bad. So today we are going to be deliberately going into quote unquote bad postures because we need both ends of the spectrum for our bodies to naturally find their own best center. And this leads us to Gary Ward's first rule of motion, which is muscles lengthen before they contract. So if you are stuck like this, like my client was, shoulders pinned back, what muscles are going to be stuck short? Everything at the back between the shoulder blades, squeezing the shoulder blades, really short and contracted. And what's stuck long? Everything in the front. So she actually cannot even lengthen the muscles of her upper back. And we need the muscles to be able to lengthen before they contract. So if she's stuck like this and she can't get out of that, there is actually no stimulation for any of her upper back muscles to be able to perform well, because muscles need to lengthen before they contract. If you'd like to learn more about that rule, I recommend you check out Gary Ward's book, What the Foot, or watch any of his educational videos he has online. That rule in itself could take a long time to go into deeper, so we're not going to do that. And I don't just want you to believe every word that I say, that it's an absolute rule, but in gait, muscles have to lengthen in order for them to contract. So we need those muscles of the upper back to be able to lengthen first before they are able to get the stimulation to contract back. So we can see a problem that someone might have if they're stuck like this, muscles can never lengthen back there. Or if you're stuck like this and the muscles are just long and they can't get out of that long position, then they're also not going to be able to contract back. And if everybody covets standing up straight, we need those upper back muscles to be able to do something. So they need the option to both go into a long state so they can get into a short state and then get out of there and come back again. Okay. So I feel like I should stop talking and we should get moving soon, but I just want to say a few more things, if that's okay with you guys. Because there's a couple of myths around posture and mistakes that I think are good to discuss. And one that comes up a lot, like every week for me, is people blaming their environment as the sole source of their bad posture. So for example, how many of you blame sitting at your desk and your mouse? So many people do that, and it's okay. I mean, for sure, it can be a contributing factor, but it's not the only factor, because I sit a lot and I feel okay most of the time. So I have a client who was sharing the story with me when I was asking her about posture, and she's like, I'm trying to get a better ergonomic desk setup because I think that my bad posture is the reason why my left shoulder is bothering me. I'm like, okay, that's fair. So she got this new desk set up where she has an ergonomic keyboard and mouse and a chair and everything. But she also has an eye vision problem, so she can't see very far. So now that she has this amazing ergonomic setup and her shoulders are going to be good, now she has to go like this to see the screen. So either way, no matter what she does, she needs to get her body resilient to her environment because she can't change the environment in such a way that she can actually be comfortable. Either it's her shoulder that's going to bug her because she has her stuff really close to her and she's like this, or she has her thing really far from her and she's sitting upright, but she can't because she has to go forward to see. So either way, she's got a problem. So just make sure your body can tolerate whatever environment is thrown at you. That seems to be the best strategy. And there's also standing desks, which people tout as the solution for all these things. However, I had another client who was like, yes, standing desk is the way, I sit too much. But he's got a really bad ankle, like really old ankle sprain, really, really rough shape. So now he's standing for 8 hours a day. And I saw him and I'm like, your ankle is like really compressed today. He's like, yeah, I've been standing a lot. I'm like, oh man, so if you sit, you're worried about this happening. But now if you're standing all day, now your ankle is messing with your body. So you really can't win. So the only real thing we can do for a long-term effect is to get our bodies in a balanced state such that we're resilient to whatever the environment throws at us. Just be ready for anything. A lot of people blame the way they sleep too. They're like, I don't know how many times in a week I hear, I must have slept wrong. How can you sleep wrong? I mean, for sure you can sleep in an awkward position if you're like mangled up somehow, but you can only sleep with the body that you have. So I have a client who she also told me this story yesterday, and I thought it was great how she typically stands with her chin like this and her neck kind of compressed at the back. And she realized, I've been sleeping like this. I didn't know I was sleeping like this. So then she adjusted herself and started to sleep a bit more like this. Then we've been working on giving her the option to actually drop her chin because her neck was so compressed at the back, she couldn't even drop her chin. But now she has that option. And so she was lying in bed and she was like, oh, what if I sleep like this with my chin down now that I can actually do that? And she had this insight that, wow, this will help me to not wake up feeling like my neck is a mess. So you can only really sleep with the current option that your body has. And what I've noticed for myself and for many of my clients is that as they restore better balance to their bodies, then they just sleep in a better balanced position. And it's not that you slept wrong, it's that your body slept in the only option it had to sleep in. I hope that makes sense. So there's other things that I had written down to say, but I think that'll do it for now. I think I'll just be repeating myself over and over. So why don't we do a little bit of movements and explore these concepts with some practical strategies. So what I'd like to do is this finding center experience with our whole bodies, not just the spine, but we're going to be looking at, yes, the spine, but also our feet and our hips and our shoulders and our arms. And give our bodies an experience that's not to correct ourselves for having bad posture, but to give new information and awareness and to restore some missing options for movement that we might not have, find some dark zones that if you are like this, you might not ever have gone into this position and never experienced stretch in your upper back up until today. So we want to find those new options to help your body have a new unconscious, more balanced way of standing that then will translate into whatever other activities you want to do, whether that is sitting a lot or sleeping or standing, or I don't know what your sport is, mountain unicycling, whatever it is that you do, have a bit better of a balanced state to do it within. And the counterintuitive part of this is that it means we also need to go into those bad posture positions in order to get both ends of the spectrum. So there is no good or bad movement for today. Okay. So you will need a chair or something to sit on for this, for one of the exercises. But to start, let's just come on up to your feet. And let me make sure I have my plan available. All right. So come up to a comfortable standing position. We already kind of checked in with how your body likes to, by default, organize itself. So go into that place again where you're just letting yourself go. You can close your eyes and go into your chilling around at home, not really caring what people think about how you're standing, not trying to impress mom, not sucking in your stomach because your dance teacher is judging you. Oh wait, that's me. And I want you to observe where you're getting the feeling of the pressure in your feet. Do you have more pressure in your right foot or your left foot? Do you have more pressure in the insides of your feet or the outsides of your feet? More pressure on the front of your feet or the back of your feet? And how is this different from your right to your left foot? Where is the patch of your feet that stand out as taking the highest amount of your body weight? And where are the parts of your feet that have very little body weight on them that you can't really feel them even touching the floor? Like my right pinky toe, nothing going on under there. But the inside of my right heel is pretty much where all my weight is. So we want to know where you're feeling the weight in your feet because it's a nice representation for you of where your center of mass of your body and where your whole body is organizing itself over your feet. And if we're looking to find center, a nice gauge is how centered you feel between your feet. Now we're going to do a couple of movement check-ins just to see how balanced these movements are from one end of the spectrum to the other. We'll look at your pelvis first. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this assessment, you're going to find the two sticky outy bones at the front of your pelvis here, your anterior superior iliac spine if you are an anatomy person, or the pointy pelvis bones, we can call them. What I'd like you to do is to go into a anterior tilt with your pelvis. So you're going to tip those two bones forwards and down to the floor, and you'll feel your tailbone lift up towards the ceiling. Anterior tilt, and just gauge how far you're able to roll your pelvis in this direction. And then go the other way, take those two bones and do a posterior tilt. So you're tilting those guys back and down, and your tailbone will roll under to the floor, tucking under your pelvis. Posterior tilt of the pelvis. And I want you to gauge which direction on this spectrum of pelvis motion is easier for you to access, posterior tilt or the anterior tilt. And if there's any discomfort with either of these motions, make a note of that as well. Do you feel really blocked one way and really smooth the other? Most of us have one way that goes easier than the other does. So if you'd like to write down a note about that, you can, or if you have good memory, make a mental note. We'll be coming back at the end of this again to reassess these things. Next, I'd like you to, with your knees straight and your feet right under your hips, assess the shifting right and left of your pelvis. So you're going to take your pelvis and just shift it all the way over to one foot until you feel like you don't have any weight in your other foot anymore. So shift all the way to the right, gauge how far you shifted, and then shift your pelvis all the way to the left and compare. Which side did you shift farther to? Is there one leg you feel really comfortable and confident to get your weight onto? And is there maybe a leg that you kind of get stuck and you can't go any further? Do you feel big stretches on one side when you do this and not on the other? Whatever you're experiencing, just make a note of that. Mostly, you want to know easier right, easier left, a direction you can't go. I can go really well to the right, but I'm having a bit of trouble getting into my left leg. This is my leg where I've had a bunch of injuries, so no surprise there. Now let's look at our side bends with our spine because we talked a lot about that today. So take your rib cage, one side, the lower ribs, just tilt them down to the floor. So you're side bending with your spine and rib cage to the right, and then compare that with the side bend to the left. Is there one way that you go farther, you get blocked one direction? I really don't like going to the left. It doesn't feel uncomfortable. I just can't go. To the right, it feels like I'm just easy breezy. So interestingly, I can't shift to the left and I can't bend to the left. So whatever is coming up for you as a pattern might be nice to make some notes about that for yourself. Now let's look at how well you can extend your spine, because this is the main posture thing that people are after, is being able to stand up tall. So take your upper chest bone, your sternum bone, and just lift it up to the ceiling. And see how easy that is to do. Do you feel like you can do that without shrugging your shoulders up? And then take your chest and round it down. So you're slouching, you're doing a flexion with your spine. Can you actually flex your spine? It's amazing how many people actually struggle to do this, despite the fact that they complain that they're slouching. They actually can't access this movement if they're stuck there. And we know if you're stuck here and you can't move more into there, you can't actually do anything with these muscles of your upper back. So what was easier for you to do? The extension of your spine, lifting up against gravity, or flexion with your spine going down into a rounded position? And what about your shoulder blades? Let's just check in your scapulae, these wing-shaped bones on your back. Try and squeeze isn't a good word. Bring your shoulder blades together behind you. Just your shoulder blades. Try not to do anything else like this. Just bring your shoulder blades towards your spine. See how easy that is to do. And then bring your shoulder blades forwards, sliding them along your rib cage, rounding them forwards without moving your back. Try not to move your back, just slide your shoulder blades. Can you actually move them forwards? And again, it's amazing how many people complain that they're stuck here, but they actually can't go any further into this position. They don't have the access to move their shoulders forward, nor can they bring them back. So what's going on with you? Shoulders forwards and backwards, retraction and protraction. And lastly, let's look at your neck a little bit, because that is a thing that people often will complain about, their neck posture. So what I'd like you to do is take your nose and just tilt it down towards your chest. And then take your nose and tilt it up to the ceiling. Is there a range of motion that you go farther or is more comfortable? A range of motion that feels not pleasant or feels like you can't do it, it's missing from your vocabulary? Chin down, chin up, which would you rather be in for the rest of your life based on how it feels? So with that bit of information, your foot pressure and those several movement assessments, we have a good gauge of what your body is currently able to do. What are its options? And now let's see if we can expand upon those options. And this is a very general movement session. It's not going to be specific to you, but you can apply the concepts to anything that you do, I hope, and get some benefit from them. So we're going to start with an exercise with your back against a wall. And many of you guys know this one already if you've done work with me. So I'm going to adjust my situation, my camera, so you can see my less nice view of my wall. Okay, this should be good. And you're going to put your back against a wall and do an exercise that we in anatomy and motion call cogs very amorously. So on the wall, you want your back of your head, back of your rib cage, and back of your pelvis to touch. And this is to help you stay stacked up so that you're not leaning forwards or like this. You can put your feet as far from the wall as it feels comfortable for you to not strain your body. And what you're going to do first is we're going to be going through the cycles of extension of your spine and flexion of your spine while staying in a stacked up vertical field of gravity, which many of us struggle to do. And we'll start this with your skull. So take the point of your head that's on the wall and just slide it up. And you should feel your chin dropping and the back of your neck coming closer to the wall. As you do this, lift your upper chest up towards your chin without lifting your shoulders. You should feel your upper back starting to peel away from the wall. So now we have your upper back extending and your neck is getting longer and decompressing. Then go the other way. So let your rib cage go down and your chest go down and let your chin go up. And now you'll feel the opposite happening. So your upper back's rounding and your chin lifting. You're going to feel the front of your neck open and the back of your neck get shorter. So these are the two cycles that we want your spine to be able to go through. Let's just keep building this out. Follow along with me if you can. So again, slide your skull up the wall and let your chin drop and let the back of your neck come towards the wall. As you do this, your upper back's going to peel away from the wall and your chest is going to lift up. Now we're going to add in your pelvis here. So what you want to happen right now is for your pelvis to go into that anterior tilt. So think of your pelvis bones rolling down to the floor here. And that should lift your lower back away from the wall. So now you have a nice curve of your spine away from the wall, but your neck is lengthening. So we have a decompression at the back of your neck happening. Shoulders should just be chilled out right now. Now let's reverse that. Start by tucking under your pelvis and feeling your lower back start to push into the wall a bit. So you're flattening out your lower back into the wall, rounding it. Let your chest go down, front of your rib cage go down, and your chin's going to lift up, and your neck is now shortening and coming away from the wall, opening the neck at the front, closing your neck at the back. So I hope what you can notice, if this is new for you, is that your spine is now lengthening and decompressing, but your neck is shortening and compressing. So we have the opposites. Neck does the opposite to the rest of your spine. Let's do one more round. Let your head slide up the wall and set off that cascade through your body. So your chest is going to lift. Try to peel off one vertebrae at a time from the wall of your upper back. Let your pelvis anterior tilt. It doesn't need to be big, but it should be enough that you feel your lower back lifting away from the wall. And can you feel now how everything at the front of your body, your abs are getting all stretched open? And with that lengthening through your abdominals, you're giving them the stimulus to contract. So when your abs contract, now you're getting pulled into the opposite direction. So pelvis is going to tuck under, which will shorten your abdominals. Let your lower back push into the wall. Let your rib cage go down at the front. Let your chin go up. So we have shortening of the abdominal muscles, lengthening of all the back muscles. This is our slouch, but this is a good quality slouch because you're stacked up. Hopefully all your joints are moving in an even fashion, not just moving from one hinge point. Your neck and your back are coordinating together. If you'd like to do one more at your own pace, go for it. Extension of the spine, the chin dropping, decompressing the neck. Flexion of your spine, pressing your back into the wall, lengthening your back muscles, decompressing your lower back, opening the front of your neck. Abdominals starting to shorten, upper back muscles lengthening. And take a little break. And for many people, that exercise can be quite challenging. Okay, moving along, grab your chair or whatever you have that you can sit on. You can use a stool or a stability ball or couch, whatever. It's nice if you have a chair that has a back that allows you to sit straight and not like leaning back. Or if you don't have a back on your chair, that's okay too. So we're going to do that same exercise sitting in a chair. Since a lot of us spend time sitting, this is what I like to recommend my clients do if they do sit a lot and they don't really have the ability to heal themselves out of their chair, because you get focused sometimes and you don't want to stand up, and I get that. But you can do that exercise, the cogs, sitting in a chair, and it's a very lovely experience actually. So we're going to do it sitting, if you can, as straight as you can, but don't worry about being perfect. And let's begin with that pelvis anterior tilt. So you're going to tilt those pelvis bones forwards and down towards your thighs, and feel how that puts you more onto the front of your seat, sitting forwards of your sit bones. And then start to feel how that pushes your spine forwards. Your lower back should push forwards. And then start to lift your upper chest upwards. So you're creating that arch in your back. Now, do you notice if your chin is lifting, or is it able to stay where it was? Because this is all based on Gary Ward's work on gait. In gait, when we're walking, we want the eyes level on the horizon. So I'd like you to keep your head level. So as your chest lifts and your back extends like this, slightly drop your chin in order to keep your eyes level on the horizon. You should feel your shoulder blades going down. Now let's go the other way. So on your chair, tuck your pelvis under and roll onto the back of it. Let your lower back round. And if you have a back of your chair, you can feel, you can think of pushing your back into the back of your chair. Let your rib cage go down towards your belly button. Keep your eyes on the horizon. You can just let your arms dangle. And the key thing here is not to round your back like this. Still imagine that you have that wall behind you, and you're trying to get as much motion from your spine without actually leaning backwards or forwards through space. Let's do a couple more rounds. From your most rounded position, begin to anterior tilt with your pelvis. Roll your pelvis bones forwards towards your thighs and let your whole spine extend up, arching your back. If you did that anterior tilt and it pushed your whole body forwards through space, then there's actually no extension happening through your spine. You're just leaning forwards like a hard plank of wood. So as you anterior tilt your pelvis, tipping forwards on it, you want to let your upper back correct backwards into an arched C shape. Feel the back of your neck lengthening and the crown of your head lifting taller to the ceiling. And then posterior tilt, again, roll onto the back of your pelvis. Try not to get a lot shorter here. Try to stay tall and just think your belly button's moving backwards into your organs, and your organs are pushing backwards into your spine, and your spine's pushing backwards into the back of your chair if you have one. Let your chest go down and exhale completely to deflate any air trapped in your lungs. Feel how the back of your neck shortens and the front of your neck lengthens. One more time, anterior tilt to the front of your pelvis. Feel your spine uncurl from that rounded position. And if you feel like you're getting a bit of crankiness in your lower back, just check if that's the only spot that's moving. Ideally, we want nice even motion through every joint of your spine, not just pushing forwards from one spot like this. So really even articulation of all of those 33 joints in there, not just one of them. Chin down. See if you can detect a lengthening and decompression in the back of your neck here. Make sure it happens by just chin dropping, not your whole head falling forwards through space. Well, I guess I should probably put my hair in a ponytail. It's probably annoying for you guys. So finish up with one more round of rounding, posterior tilting, spine moving backwards. And if you know that you have one spot in your back that you really round from, try to keep that spot a little less involved. Try to move, if you find that it's hard to move your lower back, focus in on your lower back and just keep your upper back from doing too much. See if you can even out where the curve is coming from here. And it might be a bit of an ab workout. And take a little break there. You can put your chair to the side and for a moment, come back and stand on your feet before we move on and just check in with how stuff feels there. So just doing those two movements to move from one end of the spectrum, from flexion of the spine to extension of your spine. Does anything feel a little bit more, I don't want to say how you should feel. Does anything feel different? It might or it might not. For some people, you will notice changes already. For some of you, maybe not so much. But posture isn't just about your spine. Posture can be applied to any single joint in the body. Is it able to rest in a state where it's more centered? So there's equal potential for movement, one end of the spectrum of that joint's ability to the other. And a big thing that a lot of us have issues with is our feet. So we are going to explore a little bit of movement for our feet, which if you know this anatomy and motion stuff, we're pretty big on feet, so being able to pronate and supinate. So let's take a look at that now. So put one foot forwards and one foot back, and we'll just do a little exploration of pronation of the foot. And then we'll link that up with your spine to put the two things together. So go right leg forwards, just so I can speak the same language as you for now. And you're going to bend your right knee and just put some weight into your right foot. And I'd like you to feel what happens with your foot when you do that. Do you feel, does your arch lower down into the floor and spread out? Or does your arch stay pretty rigid and upright and you don't feel like there's a lowering or a spreading of your arch? What you'd like to have happen is your arch to lower into the floor, spread out, foot get longer, and allow a bit of weight to come towards the inner side of your heel, inner side of your arch, and into the inner side of the ball of your foot. So the part of your big toe, what do you want to call that? The ball of your foot, the big toe side. The first metatarsal is the technical term. And if your body is resistant to this, that's okay. We're going to work on it a little bit. So what you ought to feel is as you bend your foot, bend your knee, just allow the weight to go onto the inner side of your foot. And if that's not happening, we're going to use a bit of a twist with your pelvis to get that to move a little bit more. So twist your pelvis like so, away from your front foot. And what you should be able to feel is how if you twist, that puts a bit more weight through the inside of your foot. You shouldn't need any muscles to help your foot do this. So there shouldn't be any pulling and squeezing of your muscles of your foot. You're just aiming your knee towards your big toe, not out to the side, but down towards your big toe. Let your pelvis twist a bit and see if you can put some weight through the inner part of your foot, that big bone that was designed to bear weight. And if you can get this feeling of the muscles of your underside of your foot spreading out and lengthening and stretching a bit, that's a very good sign. Now, when you do this, you don't want to let the outside of your foot come off the floor. So you shouldn't see your fifth toe, your pinky toe come off the ground, nor should you have your heel coming off the ground. Keep those 3 points of contact, big toe side, pinky toe side, and your heel on the floor. The way to get a foot to pronate isn't to force it, but to get your body weight on top of it and let gravity do the rest. Let your weight plus gravity bear down on the foot, Spread the bones out, lower the arch. Try to avoid dumping your knee really far in. Just aim it down your big toe. And do a few more reps. You might start to feel your quad working, which is a good sign. You might even start to feel the rest of your butt or your leg, anything else there working. But if you feel stretching in your foot, stretching in the back of your ankle and the Achilles tendon area, these are good things with a solid contact with your whole foot on the ground. All right, take a little break. Go for a walk on that, just to let it settle in and see how things feel after that. For some of you, if that was a new experience, I'd be curious to hear how that went. Some of you guys have been doing this for a while with me, so you know. You know. Let's do your other side and see how that goes. So you're going to bend your knee and see what this foot does. Does the weight go naturally to the inside of your foot, or naturally do you put the weight on the outside of your foot? If you just let your body choose what it wants to do unconsciously, where does the weight go in your foot? Inside, outside? Can you feel your arch lowering a bit, or do you feel like you're holding your arch up? Or do you just feel like your arch is really stiff and rigid and it doesn't want to go down? Do you feel your foot lengthening and spreading? Try to visualize this. In your mind, visualize all the bones of your foot spreading out, lowering the arch. And if you want to add in a bit of a twist with your hips, if you're struggling to put the weight on the inside of your foot, twisting your hips away from your front foot can be a nice way of encouraging a bit more weight towards the inner side of your foot. Try to visualize your body getting on top of your foot, like your belly button is resting right over the arch of your foot. Don't worry about your back leg too much. Just let it do whatever it wants to do for now. Check in if you have 3 points of contact, a full tripod on your foot. If you are losing contact with any of the 3 points of contact, big toe side, pinky toe side, or your heel, then it's no longer a quality, true pronation. It's just your foot rolling in. So we need those 3 points of contact. And just compare right side and left side. Is there one that's easier, one that's harder to do this movement with? If it's harder on one side, did anything happen to that ankle or foot or knee? Is there like an ankle sprain or ACL tear? Anything like that? That might make it not feel safe to do this, in which case don't force it, but it's good information to have. If your foot cannot pronate, and we go back to the idea of muscles lengthen before they contract, what's the other foot posture that people covet as the almighty thing a foot should be able to do? Supination, lifting into an arch. The beauty about pronation is that this is the moment in time when we walk, when the foot pronates, that the muscles under the foot get to stretch out. And what happens when the muscles under the foot get stretched out? They get the stimulus to contract. And what happens when the muscle contracts? It pulls the bones in a different direction. So everything getting lengthened out on the bottom of the foot is now going to get the stimulation to contract back and create that almighty supination everyone wants to get. So we need this pronation of the foot in order to get that end of the spectrum, muscles lengthening, contracting back, pull the arches up. So if you're done with that foot, walk around on it a little bit. See how it feels. And then I'd like to do the opposite end of that foot spectrum and include some spine into it too. So the opposite thing that the foot does is that supination posture of the foot. Even though I don't really want to call it a posture because the foot is dynamically moving into various degrees of supination and pronation as you walk. But anyway, so there's one moment in time when you walk where your foot needs to be supinated, which is when your heel hits the ground. It's a very easy thing to observe in ourselves, so we can use this as an exercise. So when your heel hits the ground, we want a very specific shape. We should have the toes up, should have especially your big toe up, not pointing down. And there should be a bit of an arch in your foot here, not a flat foot. So to get that, what I'd like you to do is just step back and lift one of your feet up so you're into the heel. And I want you to check if naturally your weight goes into the inside of your heel or the outside of your heel. What's happening for you right now? Are you more inner side of your heel or outer side of your heel? And which do you think that we want? If you're looking for a supinated foot, which one gives you the shape that most looks like an arched foot? Hopefully you can see it's when your weight's on the outside of your heel. It sort of pulls your arch up into a supinated, more high position. So that's where you're going to put your weight in your foot, on the outside backmost corner of your heel. From here, just keep your knees straight, and I want you to send your butt back and rock deeper back on your heel, and you should eventually get to a point where your hamstrings are getting a bit of a stretch. And that's what you're going for here. Supinated foot, weight in the outside back part of the heel, straight knee, find a bit of stretch on your hamstring, and then step back forwards. Now, this is an exercise to emulate when the leg swings through and lands on the ground. When your leg swings through, what does that do to your spine, do you think? Of the two things we did today, does it go like this with your spine, extending it? Or would you want your spine to be rounded? 50% chance of getting it right if you don't know. And just think about how much a leg weighs. Your leg's roughly 17.5% of your total body weight. A little bit different if you're a woman versus a man, but that's a heavy ass leg. And if it's swinging through, what it should do, if you just swing your leg, what do you feel happening in your spine? You should feel your spine kind of rounding, flexing as your leg swings through. So that's what we want to happen. That should naturally pull you into a more rounded position. So as you do this, weight in the heel, toes up, let your back round and tuck your pelvis under as you send your butt back. You can reach forwards a little bit. So actually, when we're walking, when the foot is supinating, it needs to happen with a rounded spine, not with an upright spine like this. Rounded spine. And this is a general rule that shows up throughout most of the walking cycle is whenever your foot is supinated, which is good, your spine is rounding, which is bad. It just is what it is. So if you can find that feeling of your hamstring getting a bit of a lengthening sensation while you're in that supinated position, and as you're rounding your back, you might get the feeling of your lower back decompressing, stretching a bit as well, which is nice. Nice if you're me. And do that a few times and then switch to the other side and just compare that. Weight in the back, outside corner of your heel, big toe up to the ceiling. Sit your butt back to 6 o'clock with a straight knee and let your tailbone roll underneath you and your lower back round a little bit. This is a bit of an exaggeration of what it would be like for your body during that moment when your heel lands on the ground. If you've done any of Gary Ward's online educational courses, this is an exercise that is used a lot. Or in any of my online workshops in Liberated Body and in my online classes, we practice this movement and different iterations of it quite a bit. If you're having trouble finding the feeling of your hamstrings here, that's common for a lot of people, so don't worry too much about that. It'll come with time. It took me a couple of years because I had some problems and I still have some problems, so okay. Weight in the outside, back part of your heel, toe up, knee straight, round your back, just send your butt backwards until you find a bit of a stretch in the back of your leg. And if you are having trouble with this, I know it's very last minute, but tomorrow I am starting my next 4-week liberated body workshop. And day 3 of the workshop, we cover this exercise in a bit more detail, as well as everything we did today. So super last minute, but there's still time if you wanted to register tomorrow and the next 4 Saturdays. Okay, so I think we better just pause there. We could do more, but we all have lives to get back to. So this is a nice intro. So what I'd like you to do next is just put your feet side by side again and check back in with what we did in the beginning. So where's the pressure in your feet now? Is it different? Remember our kind of a goal, I guess, was this idea of finding center by exploring extremes of a range of motion at different joints of the body to give them more information about how they ought to be able to move. Do you feel a bit more centered in your feet? If you were all on one foot before, do you feel like there's a little bit more on the other side? If you were all on the insides of your feet, do you feel a little bit more spread evenly throughout? You might or you might not. You might not really even have any certainty about what you're feeling in your feet, and that's okay too. And next we can just take a quick check back in with these motions we did. The first one was that anterior, posterior tilt with the pelvis. So quickly go through that again and just check if there's any difference in the range either way. If it's easier now both ways, or if it was really hard in one direction before and you couldn't really get any access, now maybe you have a little bit, or it feels the same either way. See what's going on there. Or if there was discomfort before, maybe it feels a little smoother. Check with your shifts of your pelvis, right and left. Any difference in how that feels for you? Better one direction than the other now, more even both directions? Did things get worse? Check in with your side bends. Things feel same, different? When you're ready, check in with your ability to lift up, extending your spine, or round your spine. Oh, that goes a bit easier. Check with your ability to move your shoulder blades. I had a little bit of a plan to do something with our shoulder blades today, but didn't really get to it. But because your shoulder blades sit on your rib cage, if you have better access to the motion of your rib cage, you might find that your shoulder blades are just moving a little bit easier because the thing they sit on is a little bit better centered, perhaps. And lastly, we just had the tilting of the head. So chin down, chin up. Are there any differences in any of these movements for you that you are aware of? And if you'd like to make notes about anything there, you can. Or whatever you want to do. Your body, your life. And I think that's where we'll end it for today. But if anybody would like to share anything they observed there, or if there's any questions, now is a good time. So how was that for you guys? Did anybody have any differences from before to after in terms of how centered they felt, how their movements felt? You can type something in, or you can just unmute yourself now if you'd like to speak. All good.
I definitely found out my left ankle was very shaky when I was doing that last exercise. And it was fine when I was pronated, but subnated was very tricky. But I found when we went back after having done this, I did feel a little more balanced than I did before.
Oh, cool. That's great, MK. And says opened up my right side. Nice. Nice. Anybody else? Was there anything that was challenging about that for you? Okay. Rebecca says saw some changes. Cool. If you don't mind saying what changes you saw, that would be interesting. And if people don't want to share, that's okay too. And if there are any questions, that would be great. But if you don't have any questions and everything was crystal clear, then that's cool. I see. Listening to the body instead of doing it the right way. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. Tough to untrain your body from habitual ways of moving for sure. That's a big thing for a lot of people. I'm just trying to get into the chat screen again. Cool. Well, there doesn't seem to be that many questions, so everything must have been very, very clear. But if you do have any questions afterwards, please let me know. You can always just feel free to shoot me a message, shoot me an email, and I am happy to help you out as best I can. But I guess we'll wrap up there for today. Thank you guys for coming out. As I said, if anyone is interested in joining the workshop tomorrow, you are more than welcome. I can send you more information about that. Just shoot me an email about it. Otherwise, I hope you have an excellent day. And if you have any recommendations for a topic for next month, let me know. I'm happy to take suggestions. Thanks for coming out. And it's so lovely to see some people that I haven't seen for a while. From Toronto. Thanks for coming out, guys. Have an excellent day.